want to say to my babies that your mama loves you so much. I just feel in my heart that you're okay. We will do anything we will to help you to get them home. Please, please bring them home.
A composite picture of the suspect is already up in storefront windows.
Did you believe her?
Yeah. Everybody believed her. I did. Well,
My body got
something wasn't right from the beginning.
I did not have anything to do with the abduction of my children.
A woman pulls up to a stranger's house at night, hysterical. "He's got my kids," she screams. "A black man carjacked me and took my babies." Police swarm the small South Carolina town of Union. Helicopters search from the air. Bloodhounds track through forests. The FBI joins the hunt. For 9 days, the entire nation watches as this young mother, Susan Smith, stands before TV cameras, sobbing, begging the kidnapper to return 3-year-old Michael and 14-month-old Alexander. Her husband stands beside her, devastated. They plead together, "Please, don't hurt our children." But investigators notice something strange. Her story doesn't add up. The traffic light she says was red would only turn red if another car was waiting, but she said no other cars were around. Carjackers want cars, not children, so why keep the kids? And there's something else. Something in her eyes. The way she looks at the camera. The detective leading the case has interviewed thousands of people. He knows when someone is lying. And on November 3, 1994, 9 days after those boys disappeared, Susan Smith finally breaks. She confesses. There was no black carjacker. No kidnapping. The truth is so much worse. She strapped Michael and Alex into their car seats, drove to a boat ramp at John D. Long Lake, put the car in neutral, and watched as it rolled down the ramp into the water. It took 6 minutes for the car to sink. 6 minutes while those little boys, trapped in their car seats, realized their mother wasn't coming. 6 minutes of water rising around them. And Susan just stood there. Then she drove away, went home, and started planning her lie. Why? Because a man she loved, a wealthy man, had broken up with her. And in his goodbye letter, he'd written one sentence that sealed her son's fate: "I just don't want children." This is the story of Susan Smith. The mother who drowned her babies to get a boyfriend back. The woman who blamed an innocent black man and sparked a racist witch hunt. And 30 years later, she's just been denied parole. This is her story.
Do not give up on these 2 little boys.
I wanted anybody and everybody that would help look for them.
Not until her trial will the whole truth emerge, when a jury will decide if she lives or dies.
Susan and I were working in a grocery store together in Union. I was a stocker and she was a cashier. And we just got to talking at work, and we enjoyed each other's company. We both like to go out and enjoy the same things, like amusement parks, or listen to the same music, and then started dating. Thinking back now, I can't think of a single thing that would have been a sign of things that were to come.
There's a lady that come up to our door, and some guy jumped into a red light with her car with her 2 kids in it, and he took off.
Susan Lee Vaughn was born on September 26, 1971, in Union, South Carolina. Union was a small mill town, population around 10,000, where everyone knew everyone. Susan's early childhood seemed normal enough. Her parents, Linda and Harry Vaughn, had 2 other children. But when Susan was 6 years old, her father died by suicide. He shot himself. The trauma devastated the family. Linda struggled as a single mother. In 1979, when Susan was 8, Linda married Beverly Russell, a wealthy and prominent local businessman. Bev Russell was respected in the community. He was active in the Republican Party, served on the local school board, and was a deacon in the church. He seemed like the perfect stepfather. But behind closed doors, something terrible was happening. When Susan was 15 years old, Bev Russell began sexually molesting her. It started gradually, inappropriate touches, comments. Then it escalated. The abuse continued for years. Susan never told anyone. She kept the secret, ashamed and confused. By high school, Susan was struggling. She attempted suicide at age 13 by taking an overdose of aspirin. She was hospitalized. But the sexual abuse continued.
I walked up to the door and Susan was standing there and she just kind of collapsed in my arms. I had to pick her up. I had to pick her up and move her back on the couch. She was very distraught, very, visibly upset.
Susan Smith has been arrested and will be charged with 2 counts of murder.
Michael and Alex were the only reason for me to get up. And it's just it's hard to explain, but it's really like a part of you dies. Something on the inside, it's like a pilot light goes out, or just a light bulb slowly dims till it burns out. There's no life. You feel lost. It's like you don't know what to do. The reason you got up every day is now gone. So what am I supposed to do now?
Years later, during Susan's trial, Bev Russell would admit under oath that he'd molested his stepdaughter. He would weep on the stand and apologize. But by then, it was too late. The damage was done. In high school, Susan was popular and outgoing despite her secret trauma. She was pretty, blonde hair, big smile. She dated a boy named David Smith. David came from a troubled family himself. His brother had died of Crohn's disease, and his father had attempted suicide. David and Susan bonded over their shared pain. They married on March 15, 1991. Susan was 19, David was 20. She was already 2 months pregnant. On October 10, 1991, they had a son, Michael Daniel Smith. He was a beautiful baby boy with his mother's smile. But the marriage was rocky from the start. Both Susan and David were immature, tempestuous. They fought constantly. They accused each other of infidelity. They'd break up, get back together, break up again. It was a toxic cycle.
State intends to seek the death penalty.
Did I want an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth? Absolutely. Yes, I did want the death penalty. The first day in court, when I saw her, I think it was anger all over again. Wanting to confront her. A lot of days during the trial, I wanted to kill her. And it got so bad in my mind that I would be, studying where the officers of the court were at and how far away I was from her, and plotting okay, I can be on top of her in about 3 seconds, and it's going to take, I know that cop, probably a good 5 seconds before he could reach me. All this stuff used to go through my head every day in court, because I wanted her to know what she had done to me.
In 1993, Susan got a job as a secretary at Conso Products, the largest employer in Union. Her boss was Tom Findlay, a wealthy businessman. And his son, Tom Findlay, 27 years old, worked there too. Tom was considered one of Union's most eligible bachelors, not because he was especially handsome, but because his family was rich. Susan was immediately attracted to Tom. And Tom noticed her too. She was vivacious, charming. They started talking. Flirting. Soon, they were having an affair. On August 5, 1993, Susan gave birth to her second son, Alexander Tyler Smith, nicknamed Alex. He was 14 months younger than Michael. But Susan's marriage to David was collapsing. By September 1993, just weeks after Alex was born, David moved out. Susan threw herself into her relationship with Tom Findlay. She believed he was her ticket to a better life. Tom was wealthy. He could give her the life she'd always wanted, the life she felt she deserved. She envisioned herself as Mrs. Tom Findlay, living in a big house, no longer struggling paycheck to paycheck. But there was a problem. Michael and Alex. Her children. Tom liked Susan, but he wasn't ready for the responsibility of raising another man's children. He made this clear. Susan tried to convince him otherwise. She was desperate to make the relationship work. In October 1994, everything came to a head. On October 17, Tom Findlay sent Susan a letter. It was typed, formal, almost businesslike. The letter began gently, "You will, without a doubt, make some lucky man a great wife. But unfortunately, it won't be me." Tom went on to compliment Susan. He said she was intelligent, beautiful, sensitive, understanding. He said he was proud she was taking night classes at the local college to better herself. But then came the devastating part. "Susan, I could really fall for you."
The strangest conversation that I had with Susan during those 9 days was one evening. She made the comment, "If we get the boys back," and then she stopped. When we get the boys back, do you think we could be a family again? And I just thought that was a little odd because, first she said, if we get them back. Because in my heart, I never gave up hope that we wouldn't find them.
She does not know what happened or why. She does not understand it.
Please remember who the real victims were in this case. And it's not Susan, that Michael and Alex. The two little boys who lost their life.
I remember I cried a great deal. I was even told there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom when I got done. I had to reopen some doors, like memories of Michael and Alex that I'd already closed. Maybe I already put in a shoebox and put on the shelf. And then when I had to testify, I had to open that box back up.
You have some endearing qualities about you, and I think that you are a terrific person. But like I have told you before, there are some things about you that aren't suited for me, and yes, I am speaking about your children. I'm sure that your kids are good kids, but it really wouldn't matter how good they may be. The fact is, I just don't want children. Susan was crushed. She tried desperately to win him back. On October 23rd, she went to Tom's cottage and confessed she'd been having a sexual relationship with her stepfather, Bev Russell. She thought revealing this trauma might make Tom sympathize with her, see her as damaged and in need of rescue. It backfired. Tom was shocked and horrified. He told her they could never have a sexual relationship again. It was over. Susan's world collapsed. She'd already filed for divorce from David on October 21st. She'd burned that bridge. And now Tom was rejecting her too. She felt trapped, desperate, alone. October 25, 1994, started like any other day. Susan went to work at Conso Products, but she was distracted, upset. She left work early, citing personal issues. She picked up Michael and Alex from daycare. Michael was 3 years old, a sweet boy who loved his mom. Alex was just 14 months old, barely a toddler. Susan drove around Union, thinking. She stopped to talk to a friend in a parking lot. She was crying, distraught. She talked about Tom's rejection, about how she felt like her life was falling apart. Then, around 9 p.m., Susan drove to John D. Long Lake, a quiet, secluded spot about 5 miles from her home. She later claimed she'd gone there intending to kill herself and her children, that she didn't want them to grow up without a mother. But investigators believe something different. They believe Susan made a calculated decision. She wanted Tom Findlay back.
There's no reason on this earth for a mother to do that to her children.
I want to say to my babies that your mama loves you so much. I just feel in my heart that you're okay. We will do anything we will to help you to get them home. Please. I mean, please bring them home.
We have not turned up the car as of yet. We have not turned up the suspect as of yet. And we have not had a confirmed sighting on the children having been dropped off anywhere. We haven't recovered them.
And I just couldn't believe that somebody could do that to their children.
And to get him back, she needed to get rid of the obstacles, Michael and Alex. At the boat ramp, Susan strapped both boys into their car seats in the back of her 1990 burgundy Mazda Protege. She put the car in neutral. She got out. And she released the emergency brake. The car began to roll down the ramp toward the water. Investigators later recreated the scene. It took 6 minutes for the car to completely submerge. 6 minutes. During those 6 minutes, water poured in through the vents. The boys would have been terrified, crying, screaming for their mother. Michael was old enough to understand something was very wrong. Alex, just a baby, would have been confused, scared. Susan stood at the top of the boat ramp and watched. She watched as the car sank deeper. She watched as the water closed over the roof. And then she walked away. She got into her car. Wait, she didn't have a car. The car with her children was now at the bottom of the lake. So how did she get home? Investigators believe she walked or jogged about a quarter mile to the home of Shirley McLeod. At approximately 9:15 p.m., Susan banged on the McLeod family's door, hysterical. "He's got my kids," she screamed. "Call the sheriff." She told the McLeods that she'd been carjacked at a red light at Monarch Mill by a black man with a gun. He'd forced her to drive, then made her get out. When she'd begged for her children, he'd said he didn't have time. He'd driven away with Michael and Alex in the back seat. Sheriff Howard Wells arrived quickly. Susan repeated her story: black male, around 30s, wearing dark clothing, driving her burgundy Mazda with her babies inside. Wells immediately organized a search. Helicopters. Search dogs. Volunteers. The FBI was called in. For 9 days, the search consumed Union, South Carolina, and captured the nation's attention. Susan and David, still legally married, though separated.
He looked at the jury in his closing arguments and said, "Who here among us can cast the first stone?" Right out of that quote, right out of the Bible. I think it had a lot of weight. Was that jury being a small town and, down here in the Bible Belt? Well, I was disappointed. I surely didn't believe that Michael and Alex got justice. But at the same time, part of me felt that, well, maybe Susan, didn't get the worst punishment. Because, now she has to live every day with what she did. When Judge Howard told Susan and her attorney to approach the bench to receive her sentencing, it started to pour down rain over that courthouse. After he completed, the sun came right back out. And as Michael and Alex's father, as just a man's heart of hearts, I will go to my grave knowing in my heart that to me had to be the angels crying out from heaven.
I'll never forget what Susan has done.
Me, my family, I'll never forget Michael and Alex. But forgive, that's something I'm going to have to deal with, I guess, further on down the road.
It took a lot of years, though. I knew, part of me, I guess why I struggled with it, because I was so mad at her. So, you know, I had to forgive her because that's what God tells us to do. And I had to forgive her to be able to move on with my life. Now I have 2 more beautiful children. My daughter Savannah is 10, and my son Nicholas is 8. And, you know, they're my inspiration now. They relighted that pilot light that went out when Michael and Alex died. And so everything's going real well. I have a good life now.
Appeared together on television, pleading for their son's safe return. "Please, don't hurt our children," David begged, his voice breaking. "You can take the car, whatever you want, just don't hurt our babies." Susan cried on camera, wiping her eyes. "You guys have got to be so strong," she told her sons, as if they could hear her. "I just feel in my heart that you're okay." America rallied around the Smiths. Volunteers from across the country traveled to Union to help search. Prayer vigils were held. Everyone wanted to believe those little boys would be found safe. But behind the scenes, investigators were growing suspicious. Sheriff Wells and FBI agents noticed inconsistencies in Susan's story. The traffic light where she claimed she was carjacked would only turn red if another vehicle was present, but Susan said no other cars were around. Carjackers want vehicles, not children. Why would this supposed carjacker let Susan go but keep the kids? And there was something about Susan herself. Her behavior seemed off. She cried on camera, but some investigators noticed her tears seemed forced. She'd cry, but then moments later she'd be calm, even smiling. One detective described it as crocodile tears. On October 28, investigators administered a polygraph test to Susan. She failed. When asked, "Do you know where your children are?" the machine indicated deception. Agent Pete Logan interrogated Susan daily. He developed a psychological profile, a manipulative woman, deeply troubled, capable of extreme deception. Then investigators got a crucial piece of information. They learned about Susan's relationship with Tom Findlay. Tom cooperated fully, providing police with a copy of the breakup letter. The motive became clear. Prosecutors believed Susan had killed her children to remove the obstacle standing between her and Tom. On November 3, 1994, investigators confronted Susan at her church.
I was stopped at a red light, and just out of nowhere, this black guy came up and just opened the door and jumped in the car, and he had a gun, and he had it pointed in my side and told me to drive, and so I did. And when I tried to ask him why he was doing this or whatever, he just told me to shut up or he'd kill me. So I just kept driving. My babies were in the back seat and they were crying. And I tried to tell him everything was going to be okay. He told me to get out. And I said, "Well, can I get my children?" And he said, "No." He said, "I don't have time for that." And they were just crying. And
they told her they knew she was lying. They knew there was no carjacker. They knew what she'd done. Susan broke down. She confessed. At 5:05 p.m., she signed a handwritten confession. "I was in love with someone very much, but he didn't love me and never would. I had a very difficult time accepting that. When I left my home on Tuesday, October 25th, I was very emotionally distraught. I dropped Tiffany off at home and then I drove to John D. Long Lake. I got to the lake, I stopped, got out of the car, ran and stood by the car a nervous wreck. Why was I feeling this way now? Why was everything so bad in my life? I had no answers to these questions. I dropped to the lowest point when I allowed my children to go down that ramp into the water without me. My children, Michael and Alex, are with our Heavenly Father now, and I know that they will never be hurt again. As a mom, that's one of my most important jobs, right? To protect my children from any harm. I have failed at that. I am sorry for what has happened and I know that I need help. I don't think I will ever be able to forgive myself for what I have done. That evening, divers from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources entered John D. Long Lake. They found the Mazda overturned in 18 feet of water. Inside were the bodies of Michael and Alex, still strapped in their car seats. One diver would later testify that he saw a small hand pressed against the window. That image would haunt him forever. Autopsies revealed both boys had drowned. They'd been alive when the car went into the water. They'd been conscious. Terrified. And their mother had left them there. Sheriff Wells held a press conference. His voice shook with anger and grief. Susan Smith has been charged with 2 counts of murder.
Yeah, there's a lady that come up that door, and some guy jumped into a red light with her car, with her 2 kids in it, and he took off, and she got out of the car here at our house.
And he's got the kids?
Yes, ma'am, in her car. And she's real hysterical, and I just decided I need to call the law and get them down here.
Get them going, Pam. I got 2 kids. Okay.
The nation reacted with horror and fury. How could a mother do this? How could she look America in the eye and lie for 9 days while her children's bodies decomposed at the bottom of a lake? And there was another layer of outrage, Susan's false accusation against a black man. Her generic description, a black male in his 30s, had sparked fear and suspicion in the community. Innocent black men had been stopped, questioned, harassed. Susan's lie fit into a long, racist history of white women falsely accusing black men of crimes. Civil rights attorney Gloria Brown Marshall later said, "How many black men were detained, beaten, arrested, accused of this crime based on the notion of her word alone?" Susan's family issued a public apology to the black community. Her brother said, "It is really disturbing to think that this would be a racial issue." But the damage was done. Susan Smith had weaponized racism to cover her crime. On November 6, 1994, hundreds of mourners attended the wake and funeral for Michael and Alex. The boys were buried together in a single casket. David Smith was shattered. His grief was palpable. These were his sons. His babies. And their own mother had killed them. Susan's trial began in July 1995. The prosecution was led by Tommy Pope, a young, passionate attorney who argued that Susan deserved the death penalty.
It's got me all puzzled now, because she failed it 2 times, and there's something wrong somewhere or another.
I think it takes a very sick and emotionally unstable person to be able to take 2 beautiful children like that, to be able to keep them from their parents.
Pope presented Susan's motive clearly. She killed her sons to pursue a relationship with Tom Findlay. Tom took the stand and described his relationship with Susan. He read portions of the breakup letter. The jury heard his words, "I just don't want children." Prosecutor Sonny Hostin later said, "Now you have someone saying, yeah, I was in this relationship with her and broke it off because I didn't want the responsibility of children." Now the fingers pointed directly at her. The prosecution also showed the jury a video reenactment of the crime. Investigators had recreated the scene using a similar car. The footage showed the car slowly rolling into the lake, water pouring in through vents, the vehicle sinking over the course of 6 agonizing minutes. Jurors wept watching it. A diver testified about finding the car. He described seeing a small hand against the window. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of people crying. The defense, led by David Bruck and Judy Clark, who would later defend the Unabomber and Boston Marathon bomber, focused on Susan's mental health. They argued this was a case about despair and sadness, not evil. The defense called witnesses to describe Susan's troubled childhood. Her stepfather, Bev Russell, took the stand and admitted to sexually molesting Susan for years. He wept and apologized. The defense argued that this abuse had damaged Susan's psyche, making her incapable of rational judgment. A psychologist testified that Susan suffered from severe depression and had a dependent personality disorder. She was abnormally reliant on men for her sense of self-worth. When Tom rejected her, she spiraled into despair and made an unthinkable decision. The defense's theory was that Susan had driven to the lake intending to commit suicide with her children. But at the last moment, her body willed itself out of the car. She hadn't murdered her sons, she'd failed to die with them. The prosecution dismantled this theory. If Susan intended to die, why did she get out of the car? Why did she release the emergency brake from outside? Why did she immediately concoct an elaborate lie about a carjacker? None of it fit. On July 22, 1995, after just 2.5 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict, guilty on 2 counts of murder. But the trial wasn't over. South Carolina is a death penalty state. The jury had to decide, should Susan Smith die for her crimes? During the penalty phase, Tommy Pope argued passionately for death. He said Susan had made a calculated, cold-blooded decision to murder her children. She deserved the ultimate punishment. The defense countered that executing a mentally ill woman who'd been sexually abused as a child would be wrong. They asked for mercy. The jury deliberated for 2.5 hours. They voted, life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. On July 28, 1995, Susan Smith was sentenced to 2 concurrent life terms. She was taken to the Leith Correctional Institution near Greenwood, South Carolina. Over the next 30 years, Susan's life in prison has been anything but exemplary. In 2000, she had a sexual relationship with a prison guard named Houston Cagle. He was prosecuted and served 3 months in jail. In 2001, she had another sexual encounter with a guard, Alfred Rowe. He was also prosecuted. Susan has been cited for at least 7 disciplinary infractions: drug use in 2015, possessing a razor in 1997, unauthorized contact in 2012, and most recently, in August 2024, for communicating with a documentary filmmaker without permission. In 2015, Susan wrote a letter to the state newspaper claiming she wasn't in her right mind the night of the murders. She has never taken full responsibility. David Smith remarried and had 2 more children. He has never spoken to Susan since shortly after her confession. He carried photos of Michael and Alex with him everywhere. He said he thinks about them every single day. On November 20, 2024, Susan Smith appeared before the South Carolina Parole Board for the first time. She participated via Zoom from prison. She was now 53 years old, her blonde hair graying, her face aged by 3 decades behind bars. Susan cried as she addressed the board. "I know that what I did was horrible. And I would give anything if I could go back and change it," she said, wiping her eyes. "I love Michael and Alex with all my heart. I am a Christian and I know that God has forgiven me." But David Smith was also there. Wearing a lapel pin with photos of Michael and Alex, he addressed the board with a trembling voice. "She has never expressed remorse to me," he said. "She changed my life forever that night. I'm asking that you please deny her parole today." 14 other people testified against Susan's release: family members of the boys, prosecutors, law enforcement officials. Former prosecutor Tommy Pope said, "Susan has always focused on Susan. She made a horrible choice to choose a man over her family. If she could have put David in the car, he would have been there too." The parole board deliberated. Then they announced their decision: parole denied. Unanimously. David Smith exhaled in relief. "This is the outcome I hoped for," he said afterward. "Susan Smith will remain in prison. She can reapply for parole in 2 years, in November 2026. But experts say her chances are slim. With her disciplinary record, the continued opposition from victims' families, and the notoriety of the case, it's unlikely she'll ever be released. And perhaps that's justice. Michael Daniel Smith would be 33 years old now. Alexander Tyler Smith would be 31. They should be here. They should have grown up, gone to college, fallen in love, had families of their own. Instead, they're buried together in a small grave in Union, South Carolina. Because their mother chose a man over them. Because she put them in a car, released the brake, and watched them drown. Susan Smith's case remains one of the most notorious crimes in American history. It's a story about a mother's betrayal. About racism weaponized as a cover-up. About mental illness and childhood trauma, but also about personal responsibility. 30 years later, the image haunts us, two little boys in car seats, water rising around them, their mother standing on the shore, watching. And America will never forget.
Case number 34, Susan Smith.
A dramatic and emotional scene playing out in South Carolina today. Susan Smith, who hasn't spoken publicly in 30 years.
First of all, I want to say how very sorry I am.
Pleading she served enough time for murdering her two young sons but letting her car sink with them strapped inside, and that she deserves to be set free.
I would give anything if I could go back and change it. And I love Michael and Alice with all my heart.
Smith, serving a life sentence but under South Carolina law, is up for parole after 30 years in prison, making her case to the 7-person parole board.
I am a Christian and God is a big part of my life, and I know He has forgiven me.
Susan's ex-husband David Smith arguing just as emphatically that she should be kept behind bars.
That's only 15 years per child. Her own children. It's just not enough. So I'm asking that you please deny her parole today.
Also in the room, family members and prosecutors from the original case, who spoke for nearly 30 minutes urging the board to deny parole.
Michael and Alice didn't get a chance at life. They were forced the death penalty.
Susan has always focused on what's best for Susan, and so the evidence that you have before you, I think, tells clearly that she has not focused on Michael and Alex.
Now she wants a chance to be free after only serving 30 years. No. Life should mean life.
Susan's lawyer arguing that her mental health should have been given more weight during the trial.
It is about the lack of insight, the lack of diagnosis into mental health, and it's about stigmas, old stigmas.
After a short deliberation,
Ms. Susan Smith is denied parole. The vote is unanimous.
David speaking to reporters shortly after the decision.
For 2 more years, there'll still be justice for Michael and Alex.
Michael and Alex, two toddlers who were the center of a crime that captivated the nation.